You are listening to Dove Valley Deep Divers with Erick Trickel
and Lance Sanderson.
Ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Von Miller did it again.
On Overtime Media.
And it looks like we're live. Going to let this stream breathe for just a second. Make sure we got green check marks across all platforms. Looks like we're good to go. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into a special Saturday edition of the Dove Valley Deep Divers live podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague. He's your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, Erick Trickel. Now, guys, yesterday with it being Juneteenth and just to respect the holiday and not make it about football and everything that's going on, especially in the world today, we wanted to kind of let that day have its own meaning. So that's why we are doing this stream today. This is probably not going to be a permanent thing, not a permanent fixture, at least for right now, not for the foreseeable future. So we're just kind of making up for last night. But Erick, how are we doing today on this early Saturday morning, man? I know it's, 8 o'clock there for you right now? 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock. I'm 2 hours behind you.
Yeah.
I'm doing good. Just been working and everything like that, finding some things to do to occupy my time outside of work besides more work. And so I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty Warzone. I'm terrible at it. But just been enjoying time. I'm getting ready for my anniversary tomorrow, and then my daughter's third birthday is next week, so got to get ready for that too. So there's got to be a little bit of lack of content from me for milehighhuddle.com, just as I'm sitting here doing all this stuff for that kind of stuff. But I'm excited to be here. Just made the decision yesterday, obviously, not to do it, just with everything that was going on and Juneteenth and everything, just kind of stayed back and just wanted to just not make the day about football. So, as Lance said, but we're here. We're going to make up for it. As Lance said, this is going to be a full-time thing. It's just a makeup pod for it. We're still going to be back on Friday nights here going forward. But I'm super excited. And thank you, Peter, for the happy anniversary.
Yes, absolutely. Happy anniversary from me and Samantha and all the rest of my family. Now, guys, we're going to have to get this kind of quick today. I am on vacation right now. I'm down in at my parents' house. Obviously, you can see behind me is not my typical setup. So that was another reason why we didn't go yesterday. Not the main reason. The Juneteenth thing was the biggest thing. But with me traveling down after I got off work and everything to come and visit my folks for the last time before our baby is born, we wanted to be able to do this to make up for you guys as well. Now, before we get going, there's actually a very interesting topic of discussion for today. I just want to say hello to everybody in the stream. I've got Jordan Johnson coming in, Miller Champ, Peter obviously coming in from Turkey. Actually, he is live in Turkey right now. So that's this is a big reason why we wanted to be able to do something like this, was to get into the European, the Asian audience as well, where it's not, 3 o'clock in the morning for them. Like Peter had said, it's actually dusk there, not quite nightfall in Turkey. Obviously, Jace, High Rider XX coming in. Happy Father's Day, guys. Thank you, Jace. I love you, buddy. I will see you hopefully here soon. But anyways, guys, ESPN just released a all-decade team for the AFC West. They're doing it for everybody, actually. It's not just the AFC West deal, but they're having their ESPN Nation Insider, the NFL Nation Insiders are doing all-decade teams. They're doing the best moment, worst moment, like bad officiating moments and stuff like that over the last decade, because we are going into a new decade in the 2020 season. And before we get into the all-decade team, they did actually do the best player from each AFC West team earlier as well. And the Broncos obviously had Von Miller. There's no question about that. Jeff Legwold did a really good write-up. Let me just pull this up really fast, and I'll read you what he wrote. And he said, excuse me, just 1 second. He said, the Broncos won 5 division titles during the decade, went to 2 Super Bowls and 1 Super Bowl 50, so there are plenty of candidates to be the team's player of the 2010s. But Von Miller simply rose above in performance and number of games played. The Broncos' first-round pick in 2011, number 2 overall, was an 8-time Pro Bowl selection in the 2010s, a 3-team first-team All-Pro, and Super Bowl 50 MVP. He had 106 sacks in the decade, with 7 years with at least 10 sacks, to go with 26 forced fumbles. He has been the centerpiece of a defense that in 2015 was one of the best in the Super Bowl era. And he did it all with 5 different defensive coordinators and 4 head coaches, end quote. Now, Eric, I don't think there's really any argument here that the Broncos' best player over the last decade has been Von Miller. There's really no question there. He did, Legwald did give a shout out to Demaryius Thomas as an honorable mention and Chris Harris Jr. as well, but Von Miller is one of the best defensive players in all of football. Of course, he has to be the Broncos' best player of the last decade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bummed that somebody like Garrett Bowles didn't get a mention, but yeah, it definitely has to be Von Miller. There really isn't anybody else. I mean, I guess you can make the argument for Peyton Manning, I guess, but again, it just comes to longevity for me too. And Von Miller, he's done a lot more for the team over more years. And when the Broncos did win their Super Bowl, it was off the back of that defense that was led by Von Miller. And when the Broncos got to Super Bowl off the back of Peyton Manning and the offense, they didn't win it. So. And I mean, so yeah, you just can't make that kind of argument. And just real quick, guys, I want to say thank you all for the happy anniversaries wishes. Really appreciate that, you guys.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy anniversary. Happy Father's Day early. Let's get that out there early. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers in Broncos country coming up for tomorrow, obviously, as well. But now you could also make this argument, going back to Von Miller really fast, you can make the argument that in 2013, had Von Miller not gotten hurt at the end of the later end of the season, and had Chris Harris Jr. not tore his ACL, and who was it? Terrence Knighton, I think it was, that had the defensive lineman that had a dislocated hip towards the end of the season.
I can't remember.
It was Terrence Knighton, I think, is who it was. But anyways, if the Broncos don't lose those three pieces, specifically Von Miller here, that they probably stood a lot better of a chance in Super Bowl 48 against the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks defense that year was so legendary, but there was nothing that the Broncos defense could do to stop that running game and to stop Russell Wilson. Obviously, the big kickoff return for a touchdown by Percy Harvin didn't help anything, but still, the Broncos defense missing three key starters at premium positions really hampered that defense, and Von Miller was a huge key in that.
Yeah, he was, and it would definitely be interesting to see like one of those what if situations. I'm not sure if you're a big Marvel fan, but Marvel does a series about the what ifs, the what if series, and I guess they're going to be doing a series on Disney Plus. And I think it'd be awesome to just get kind of like a what if thing with football. And I know for a while somebody from NFL.com did that. They did what if situations, and just like what if, one of them that I remember was what if the Broncos went Patrick Peterson over Von Miller. And it'd be interesting to see just what if that situation did play out, where the Broncos didn't lose those guys, where Champ Bailey's downfall didn't happen so suddenly, or they had it, or who was the cornerback? Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie actually was able to defend the run and tackle. Like, how would they have stand up? I mean, there's obviously every team has what ifs every single year. What if the Seahawks ran it instead of threw it? But it'd just be interesting to see kind of how that would have turned out for the Broncos there. Maybe be two-time Super Bowl champs over that short span.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think that, again, like I said, with Von Miller going out later towards the end of the season and Houston tearing his ACL there, Dave Damashek, thank you, James, for coming in there, the NFL. There was another one that I had seen where the Panthers went and Von Miller over Cam Newton, leaving Cam Newton to come to Denver, and that was a interesting dichotomy there of what could there potentially be there. Could you actually see a Von Miller, Cam Newton Super Bowl in Super Bowl 50, except with the roles reversed completely, Von Miller being on the Panthers and Cam Newton being on the Broncos? That would be a pretty interesting conversation there, actually.
So real quick, Miller says, that Super Bowl was one of the worst days of my life, such a letdown. Is it bad that as soon as during the coin flip, because they had that mishap with the coin flip, did anybody else just get that bad feeling that this was going to go a bad way for the Broncos? I did. I remember that. I told my dad after the whole mishap, I was like, Denver's not going to win this game. Like, it's going to be a terrible game for Denver. That's just such bad juju for them. And that first snap, and it just I was drunk by halftime. That game was so bad.
I wasn't drunk during that game, but I probably should have been. The whole coin flip deal was really kind of a bizarre situation. I don't remember exactly what happened there, but throughout the entire day, everything about the day was just surreal, and I knew something big was going to happen. I just didn't know it was going to be that kind of big, where the Broncos got their butts banked in that Super Bowl. But I will say, as soon as Manny Ramirez snapped the football over Peyton Manning's head to start the game, I knew from that point, and I did the exact same thing as you did, Eric. I looked at my dad and said, the Broncos just lost the Super Bowl on the first play. He's like, nah, it's not going to be that. No, it really was that bad. It really was that bad. Excuse me. All right, so before we continue on with this conversation, hey, Bobby coming in with a very generous super chat. Bobby, we appreciate you. You don't have to do that. We just thank you for joining us today, guys. Congratulations, Vaughn. Well deserved. Can't wait for the 2020 season. Go Broncos. Love the Huddle Up Podcast Football Priest coffee cup you've got there. I have one of those myself as well. But anyways, now before we get going into the rest part of this conversation, breaking down the entire all-decade team for the AFC West, a couple of matters of business here, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show on Twitter at DVDD_pod. It's the easiest way to find out what we've got going on. And that was actually how we announced that we weren't going to be doing a show, was on DVDD. And then it just to update what we're doing on the show, what the show is going to be doing. That's the easiest way to find out. Keep your fingers on the pulse of what we've got going on. Also, make sure you guys are following me at Sanderson MHH and for Eric at Erick Trickel. If you get a chance or financially able to do so, head on over to huddleuppod.com. Get your merch. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a T-shirt. This is the Building with Broncos one. Eric's not going to like that. But get a coffee cup, face mask. There's hoodies, something for everybody. We're going to have some Mile High Insider stuff coming on there soon as well. And if you're not in a financial possibility to be able to do something like that, the three easiest ways that you can show love and support for the show itself is to subscribe wherever you're watching, specifically on YouTube. We have we just crossed 7,000 subscribers the other day. Subscribe wherever you're watching. It's the easiest way to help the show grow organically. Like every video you see, no matter what it is, if it's Eric's content, if it's a podcast, whatever it is, like that video. And if you truly love what we're doing, share it out to everybody. Get it in front of as many Broncos fans as humanly possible. Now, to break this down just a little bit, the Broncos had a very strong representation on especially the offensive side of the football in this ESPN NFL Nation all decade team for the AFC West, highlighted specifically by the sheriff himself, Peyton Manning, the quarterback of the Broncos from 2012 to 2015. Obviously, we just got done talking about the Super Bowl 48, but also Super Bowl 50 doesn't really happen. I mean, the defense was obviously the key to that, but without Peyton Manning really running the show, obviously Brock Osweiler coming in and doing what he did, Peyton Manning was really the heart and soul of that defense. And when he came back from that plantar fasciitis injury, that foot injury that he had that sidelined him for 7 games throughout that season, when he did come back, he breathed a whole new life, not only into the team, but also into Broncos country as a whole, and ignited that postseason run in which the defense was absolutely phenomenal. There was one other quarterback in this time frame, and Eric, we talked about it briefly, but do you believe that Peyton Manning was the best quarterback in the decade for any of the AFC West teams?
So I have an issue with this. Is I'm very big on longevity. That's a big thing with me, and Peyton Manning wasn't with the Broncos for a long period of time. It was a decent amount of period of time. But Phillip Rivers, what he did with the Chargers, and I know the Chargers didn't win any Super Bowls or anything like that, but it wasn't all because of him. That team was just a bad team around him, always dealing with injuries. But again, I just can't get over the fact that Peyton Manning led the Broncos to a Super Bowl. Big portion of it off the backs of his arm and that offense, at least getting to one of them. And his leadership helped win them the second one. So while with the longevity makes it hard, I still think that Peyton Manning's the right guy to go. But definitely, in terms of Phillip Rivers, just what little the team overall did makes it hard. I mean, one of the big things we always talk about is quarterbacks make the team around them better. So did he really do that? I don't know. And real quick, one reason why I was getting kind of broken up there was I messaged Chad Peter about your question about how the store ships to sending abroad, and Chad said that it ships fine to Europe. That's all he knows.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, and Peter, I believe you're in Turkey, you had said, so you should be decent there. I'm not exactly sure. There is just with everything going on in the world right now, there's some delays and stuff. In fact, the giveaway stuff, I have not even gotten a notification from that it had shipped for Jay Doan, who won the giveaway. Also for Stephen Baumgartner, who hit me up, and he was the very first person to actually answer the question correctly. So I was like, you know what, we'll shoot you a hat as well, dude, just because we're trying to show some love and support to everybody here. So if you guys are listening today, or even after the fact as a podcast, I have not gotten notification that your stuff has shipped yet, but as soon as it does, I will give you tracking confirmation numbers and tracking numbers for that stuff as well. Now, going back to Phillip Rivers, I firmly agree with you as far as the quarterback should lift up the team and make them a better unit and take them to, Super Bowls and AFC Championship games and stuff like that. I fully agree with that. Now, one could argue the lack of overall weaponry potentially in the 2010s decades. Now, in the early 2000s, well, not really the early 2000s, but the later 2000s, when he had LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, guys like that. He has Keenan Allen right now, one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. Hunter Henry, who's very injured all the time. Melvin Gordon there for a little bit, but there's such a semantics argument to hear, and even go back to the coaching as well. Norv Turner for the longevity of his career. Anthony Lynn's doing a really good job now, but still, it's a tough argument to make Peyton Manning over Phillip Rivers, just because you look at Phillip Rivers, and if you look at him statistically and take out the not really take out the playoffs because they matter as well, but take out the fact he's never been to a Super Bowl. I mean, there's a lot of Hall of Fame quarterbacks that never went to a Super Bowl. I mean, Phillip Rivers is probably going to be one of them. Dan Marino went to a Super Bowl and never won a Super Bowl. One of the greatest statistical quarterbacks we've ever seen in the entire NFL. And Phillip Rivers is right up there with him statistically. So it's a Hall of Fame player that played the entire decade in Los Angeles and San Diego. Hard argument for me there. Now, the running back position, longtime Denver Bronco great Jamal Charles was the running back there. Actually, no, Kansas City Chiefs running back legend for the highest yards per carry average in NFL history for the longest time. Jamal Charles comes in at running back. I don't really see anybody that I can argue with as far as that goes. Left tackle Ryan Clady for the Broncos. Left guard Kelechi Osemele for the Raiders. Rodney Hudson for the Chiefs and Raiders at the center position. I don't think you can really argue that one. Right guard's interesting to me. Luis Vasquez there from the Chargers and Broncos. Obviously, the longevity there went to a pair of Super Bowls with the Broncos. And the right tackle Mitchell Schwartz will line out the rest of the offensive line. Now, Eric, is there anybody there that you can really truly disagree with?
Along the offensive line?
Along the offensive line, or even at the running back position?
Running back, definitely not. Jamal Charles, he had, the longevity with it, spending so long with the Chiefs, and then he was there with the Broncos a little bit for that season. Basically, every other running back that has been in the AFC West, it's only been, if they were good, it's only been like a year or two, or they were okay and just dealt with injuries. So there's really nobody to argue with when it comes to the running back. And same with the offensive line, really. Before we went through this, I was looking through the early 2010s, just trying to refresh my memory a little bit. And on the offensive line, there was nobody that really stood out outside of these guys, or that were better than these guys anyways. It's been a really bad year or bad decade for the offensive line in the AFC West.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Not only that, but then you have the elite pass rushers on the outside that really made the offensive line look even worse than that. I mean, you go back to the Kansas City Chiefs. They have Tamba Hali. They have Justin Houston. You have the Oakland Raiders with Khalil Mack coming off of one side. Alden Smith there for just a little bit, not necessarily as a high-level player, but he was still there. Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram in Los Angeles now. There's an elite pass rush set, and we're going to talk about this here in just a few minutes when we get to the defensive side of the football, but just the elite pass rushers that the AFC West has had over the course of the last decade or so has just been really kind of unprecedented. Now, this is where, Eric, you and we found a guy that is more of an egregious oversight than probably anybody on the offensive side of the football, even over the Phillip Rivers and Peyton Manning conversation we just had. But the guys at the ESPN, the NFL insiders for the AFC West, chose Travis Kelce as the tight end for the all-decade team with the Chiefs from 2013 to 2019. He's probably the best well-rounded tight end in the NFL right now, so I can kind of understand that. But we're forgetting about one of the greatest tight ends of all time that played for pretty much the entire decade. And you brought him up before we went live, Antonio Gates. Why is it Travis Kelce over Antonio Gates? Is it because he's a more well-rounded kind of a player, more of a blocker than a true – and Antonio Gates was no real slouch in the blocking scheme either. But Antonio Gates, that Phillip Rivers-Antonio Gates combination at the tight end position was probably the most – it might actually still be the most – well, actually, excuse me, Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski have to knock on the door there. But still, Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates, that combination was the most lethal – quarterback tight end combination in AFC West history. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Maybe even more than Shannon Sharp and John Elway.
Yeah, I think I would take Antonio Gates' blocking over Travis Kelce. Any day and twice and double that on Sundays. But only thing I can think of with Travis Kelce is kind of a recency bias, is because with Travis Kelce, he had 4 years there, the last 4 years, over 1,000 receiving yards. Antonio Gates, he didn't crack that at all in the 2010s. And just real quick, he only cracked it twice in his career. And then the last 2 years of Antonio Gates, there was injuries that he was dealing with. He wasn't quite as effective. So definitely some recency bias. But I would still put Antonio Gates on that all-decade team over Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce is being helped by all the other weapons that they have. Like, he's able to get open. There for a while, Antonio Gates was the only real weapon that the Chargers had, and he still found ways to consistently make plays and beat up on defenses. So nothing against Travis Kelce. I think he's a very good tight end who got punked by Von Miller, but Antonio Gates is just better. Like, I would put him over. This is the biggest one on this whole decades team that I disagree with, is Travis Kelce over Antonio Gates.
I totally agree with that, because if I remember correctly, and this is just off the top of my head, guys, Antonio Gates, I think, holds the NFL record for most touchdowns scored by a tight end. So we're talking NFL record holder. He's a Hall of Fame player. Travis Kelce may very well be that kind of a Hall of Fame player as well. There's no question. Antonio Gates, I mean, you had Shannon Sharp, who did it first. You had Tony Gonzalez, who came out. And then you had Antonio Gates and Rob Gronkowski at the same time. And those guys are going to be Hall of Fame players. Like Antonio Gates, I don't think there's any question about that. Travis Kelce, still, he's on his way. But at the same time, when you got a bona fide Hall of Fame player that played in the last decade, you have to go with that kind of a player. And that might be the conversation to have with, Peyton Manning or Phillip Rivers and stuff like that. Peyton Manning's obviously first ballot Hall of Famer. Phillip Rivers is not.
And I saw somebody ask about Tony Gonzalez. The issue with Tony Gonzalez is he wasn't in the AFC West during the 2010s.
No, he wasn't. He was with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Or with the Falcons, I mean.
He was with the Falcons, yes, but he was with the Chiefs in the 2010s. From 2000 and I think it was 2001 or 2000 was his rookie year.
1997.
Really? Wow, I didn't realize it was that long ago.
1997 to 2008.
2008. I knew it was 2008. But anyways, Raymond Glass coming in with a I believe that's £5 donation. Thank you very much, Raymond. We appreciate that. Nothing to say, just showing some love for the show. Thank you guys all once again for joining us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Let's see here. Maybe grab a couple of these.
While you're looking at this, I want to address this. Peyton accomplished more in less time than Rivers. That's what we were saying.
Yep.
Is that, you can make an argument for Rivers because he was with the Chargers for so long and he wasn't the issue with that team. Is Peyton Manning did more with the Broncos in less time with them. So while you do want to consider longevity, you got to factor in that Manning led the Broncos to 2 Super Bowls and Rivers struggled to lead his team to the playoffs.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. Another quick question here. Miller Champ coming in with just a question here on YouTube. Who is your favorite player from the no-fly zone? Are you speaking just to the secondary? Because if you're talking about the entire defense, probably either Von Miller or at the time Malik Jackson was one of my favorite players just because of what he could do on the interior. But if you're talking just the secondary, probably Chris Harris Jr., just because I love this story. I love the background. First off, undrafted free agent out of Kansas coming in and attaching himself like an amoeba to Champ Bailey to try to learn as much as he possibly could and to learn how to be a better cornerback and then produce at a high level for pretty much an entire decade. But at that time, Chris Harris Jr. was so good in the slot and played at an elite level and never really got the recognition that he deserved. And I think that's why I would say Chris Harris Jr., just because Yeah, he's a big mouth for the most part, but at the same time, he let his play do the talking on the field and really never wanted that recognition. Yeah, he wanted to be paid more money and stuff like that. Everybody does, but he didn't like go out and say, I'm the best. He was never that Richard Sherman vocalized kind of a person. He did it behind the scenes, let his play do the talking, and really stayed quiet for the entirety of his career in Denver until the end.
So mine would got to be Aqib 2 Chainz Talib. Just like that's probably one of the most entertaining storylines I've seen in football in a long time. So definitely, it's got to be Aqib Talib. Like for me, yeah.
Terry Randall coming in from California, showing that Broncos country Canada, showing that Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a state of being. # Eric's Tire Rocks. Apologies for that, guys.
So I just got to point out that like once every couple shows you do that. You say coming in from California when it's Canada.
Because CA is the appreciation.
It's a new tie. I bought it specifically for the show.
I see the CA, and I don't ever think about the Canada up there, the Great White North. I see CA, and that's the abbreviation for the state of California. So apologies for that. Please bear with me. I'm not very good at this yet. So, all right. Now, the wide receiver position, this is actually kind of a pretty well cut and dry situation, in my opinion. Demaryius Thomas, widely considered one of the best wide receivers in all of the NFL. During his time with the Broncos, 2010, 2018, 4 straight seasons with 90 receptions, 3 straight seasons over 1,400 yards, including that 2014 season where he had 1,600 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. Keenan Allen with the Los Angeles and San Diego Chargers, 2013 and 2019. Again, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now, probably one of the best route running wide receivers in the NFL. And then on the other side of that, Emmanuel Sanders with the Broncos for 5 years, 2014, 2019, a big integral part of that Super Bowl 50 winning offense. Him and Demaryius Thomas, even with Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler not being able to do very much at the quarterback position, they still produced, and they still both produced 1,000-yard seasons in that year. So I don't really know of a better wide receiver than those three. You might, I don't even know if you could. This is a stretch of an argument. Amari Cooper might be the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. Going back further, maybe Eric Decker.
I was going to say, you could definitely make a case for Eric Decker over Emmanuel Sanders.
You probably could.
That's about the only one. Demaryius Thomas and Keenan Allen, I think they're pretty much cemented there as the top 2 receivers of the decade in that. But yeah, definitely that third one, Emmanuel Sanders. You can make arguments for a couple other guys. Eric Decker. There's another receiver too that came to mind, but I can't remember who it was now, that you could have made an argument for. But he was only in the AFC West for like 3 years. And I mean, it was 3 good years, but it was still 3 years. So there's guys you can make arguments for, but I still think that Emmanuel Sanders is the guy that you end up walking away from with it, just because he had a decent amount of length with the Broncos, and what he did for the Broncos offense was just so tremendous, and it's got to be him. And James, there's a reason why we're not mentioning Tyreek Hill. Spoiler alert, but Tyreek Hill made it as the punt returner. Or kick returner.
It was
one
a
of
punt returner.
Yeah, he made it as the punt returner. So he's still on the all decades team, just not at receiver technically.
Yeah, and actually, it was kind of surprising because the Chiefs had 2. Actually, was it 3? Did they get Dustin Colquitt on there as well? So they had 3 of the 4 specialists for Kansas City Chiefs, because the kick returner was Niall Davis, who had I think it was a 104-yard kickoff return against the Broncos in 2014 or so. I think it was 2013 or 2014. The No Sean Marino Army crawl game where he crawled up the field on his, the game where in the national anthem, the big, huge alligator tears at the beginning of the game, iconic game. But Niall Davis had a kickoff return for a touchdown. I think he had multiple against the Broncos, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. Now get to the defensive side of the football. Remember when we said that we were going to talk about the elite pass rushers and what the AFC West has had over the last decade? The defensive ends that they have for this team, and it looks like they're playing this as a 3-4 defense. The defensive ends are Melvin Ingram from the Chargers and Khalil Mack from the Raiders, and those are your defensive ends.
I'm I'm going to say it's not really a 3-4. It's more like a 2-4.
Really, yeah. It's or a 4. It's like a 4-3 defense, really. Because
I don't
even know if you get
2-4. You have 2 down. Well, it's a 2-5 actually, because you have 2 down linebackers. They have 4 edge rushers, and they have 1 single linebacker, 1 true linebacker.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. So just to kind of go off with this, you have Melvin Ingram and Khalil Mack. You also have Von Miller and Justin Houston on the all-decade team, and they're listed at the linebacker position. And then you have Corey Liuget from the Chargers, 2011 2018. Chris Jones, obviously one of the best interior defensive linemen in the game right now, and Derek Johnson, the only true off-ball linebacker on this entire list, from the Chiefs from 2005 to 2017. So to kind of break this down, that's a lot of edge rush potential. Holy cow. But there's nothing on the interior of that defensive line. Corey Liuget was at least decent against the run. Chris Jones is an elite run defender and an elite pass rusher.
What are you smoking?
Corey Liuget?
Yeah. He was a great run defender.
He was a lot better at the run than he was against the pass, I can tell you that. But anyways, It was a strange conversation just because we went back and kind of looked at this. Now, Eric, you have a few more names than I do. Who could you potentially put in on the defensive line over Corey Liuget? Let's just go that route.
I wouldn't be putting him over in Corey Liuget.
Or why would, like, who are you going to take off of this team?
So my thing is I want to put it in a good base package, either 3-4 or a 3-3-5, something like that. So a nickel package, whatever. I want to do that. I don't want no sinking 2-5 that they have going on. This is ridiculous. So I'm going to be taking off one of those edge rushers. And the one I'm going to be taking off is Melvin Ingram. Not that he doesn't deserve to be on there, but I don't think he's the most deserving pass rusher that's been on the Chargers. I don't think he's the second most deserving pass rusher that's been on the Chargers. That was on the Chargers during the decade. You got Sean Phillips and you have Joey Bosa. They're a lot more deserving to being on this decade team. Granted, Joey Bosa's only been on them for a few years, but he's just been so outstanding of a player for them. But I'm going to take him off. I'm going to put on a guy who can play like a 5-tech type role, be a solid run defender, be able to get after the pass rusher. I'm going to look at a guy like Richard Seymour, who was there with the Raiders early on in the 2010s. I'm going to make an argument for Tamba Hali as well, who was a really good defensive lineman for the Chiefs that played with his hand in the dirt, played in a 3-4 front, played with his hand in the dirt in a 4-3 front, even played with his hand out of the dirt in a 2-point stance. So there's plenty of other guys, and you can even sit there and possibly argue Dontari Poe a little bit as a kind of a true nose tackle type in this. So there's other options for it. My biggest thing is, it's not that Melvin Ingram's bad. I want to go and I want to put them in an actual defense, not this 2-5 that they have going on, where you have 6 pass rushers and 5 people dropping in coverage. It's just kind of me being nitpicky at their process, I guess, would be the biggest thing. But yeah, there's definitely guys out there that you could put on a defensive line and still do that. But then the still issue remains is that you still have to find people that can drop back into coverage. And when we were looking over this before we went live, we were trying to find other linebackers that put on here. And the only 2 guys that stood out really were Danny Trevathan and Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
There was a lot of bad linebackers in the AFC West over the last decade.
Yeah, Denzel Perryman, Jatavis Brown was another one that I kind of thought of.
Man, both not good.
Even for Kansas City, I don't know that there was any good linebackers other than Derek Johnson. So it was a strange way of going about this. And yeah, you've got the elite names at the linebacker position because they play that outside linebacker, the edge presence, and Von Miller specifically, Justin Houston as well. There's no real true like a 4-3 defensive end other than Tamba Hali, maybe Elvis Dumervil. And James Campbell came in with a comment earlier, your what-if scenario. What if the Broncos had a working fax machine in 2013 and were able to retain Elvis Dumervil instead? But that goes into a strange situation of, do the Broncos are they still able to get rid of Jack Del Rio, bring in Wade Phillips and DeMarcus Ware, and then go on that run in 2014, 2015 with the elite defensive play there? Does Elvis Dumervil fit in that kind of a situation? I kind of think he does, probably a little bit better as an off, not really with his hand in the dirt kind of that 2-point stance, that Von Miller 2-point stance, DeMarcus Ware, stuff like that. I think he probably would have been a little bit better there in Wade Phillips' defense than would have given credit for. But at the same time, that's a strange one to put in there as well. And again, the linebackers, there was not a whole lot of like quality off-ball linebacker play for the AFC West in the last decade. Now, moving this conversation forward to the secondary and the question of who's your favorite player in the no-fly zone. Well, both of ours made it onto the all-decade team for the AFC West. Chris Harris Jr. and Aqib Talib, and what they were able to do with the Broncos defense. Obviously, Chris Harris Jr., undrafted 2011 and 2019, played the entire decade. Aqib Talib playing only 3 years for the cornerback position for the Broncos. The only one that we could kind of come up with to maybe put in over Aqib Talib here was Casey Hayward in Los Angeles. And even that might be a stretch. Aqib Talib was so good for the Broncos and is still a very good player. Marcus Peters as well was the one that I brought up, but Casey Hayward was one that Eric had brought up that you could put in for over Aqib Talib.
Well, the other thing, too, is that we can go, and I mentioned earlier about taking Melvin Ingram off, is I think that Casey Hayward is a lot more deserving to be on this than Melvin Ingram is. I mean, you could even make the argument for Champ Bailey. Granted, it was only a few years, and it wasn't his best years, but he was still solid there for a couple years with Denver in the early 2010s. TJ Ward, you can make an argument for, and there was one other one.
Quentin Jammer.
Quentin Jammer was the other one, who had a pretty good career there for the Chargers. So there's definitely other safeties and cornerbacks that you can go in there and take off of Melvin Ingram and go look back to looking more like a nickel. I mean, take off Melvin Ingram, you have 3 down linemen, you have 3 linebackers, and you have 5 defensive backs. That's a nickel defense right there. So that's that. I mean, it just comes down to, out of everybody on this, Melvin Ingram's the least deserving, and he should be the one that's replaced. And I think that the best one to replace him with would be his teammate, Casey Hayward. Yeah,
that would actually be a very good nickel defense there as well, with Eric Berry and what was the other?
Eric Weddle.
Eric Berry and Eric Weddle.
The Erics.
That's the Erics, yeah. And which one do you play where? Which one do you play Eric Weddle at the strong safety position with Eric Berry on the single high center fielder there? Or what do you do?
I think that the lines are so blurred between safety nowadays that it doesn't really matter.
That's a good point too, and they both were able to do both at a high level. So
yeah,
there's really no correct answer to that question.
You play cover 2, let them both play kind of a deeper zone. You can have them come up and blitz. You can have them come up and defend the run. You can use them in all sorts of ways. I see this a lot, and this is going to send me off a little rant, and not just because you're a question, Lance, but there's a lot of fans out here that I say, "Oh, strong safety, oh, free safety," and we got to stop putting them into those kinds of limitations. Is they're a safety now? Are they a box safety? Are they a guy that's better down in the box defending the run with issues a little bit showing up in coverage? Are they a deep safety, a guy who's best down deep, kind of that center fielder type role? Do they have the range, the athleticism, the speed for that? Or are they a cover 2 safety that can kind of do a little bit of everything? Like, that's where we need to start basically putting these safeties, these qualifications for safeties to be at now, more so than strong safety or free safety. I mean, we're seeing it happen. We're seeing that kind of stuff happen on the defensive line up front. So we need to start seeing it happen in the secondary too. I mean, not just with safeties, but with cornerbacks either, or cornerbacks too. Is this guy a boundary corner? Or is he an outside, or is he a slot corner? Well, what is he able to do? Is he just a man corner? Is he just a slot corner? Because that's going to help you determine where he can play a little bit more than just limiting him because of his size nowadays.
Yeah, I agree with that. The change in dialogue and the way that we're kind of labeling these players, and you're absolutely correct there. Now there are, and I don't know if that's just really staying true to the norm of what we're actually used to talking about. Strong safety, more of the box kind of safety. Free safety, more of the deep kind of a safety. So they're really kind of an interchangeable term, but I understand where you're coming from here. Stop labeling them as a strong safety, free safety. Start labeling them as, I want this guy playing in the box. I want this guy playing at the deep, in the deep half of the field. So I get where you're coming from there. Now, guys, we do got to kind of get out of here a little bit early. Again, I am at my parents' house and I'm on vacation right now. We're getting ready to do kind of a big barbecue for me and Samantha for like a pseudo baby shower and everything like that. So get your guys' questions in here quick. We're going to kind of run a little bit shorter than our typical hour today. Let's see here. If I can go back and find a couple of these questions.
And James says, I think you could easily make the case for Justin Simmons too. If we're going to make a case for TJ Ward, we definitely can make a case for Justin Simmons. Definitely.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But if you're looking at safeties, though, making cases for safeties, there was what's his face that was with I want to say the Raiders there for a while. That was actually a pretty good safety. And there was one there for the Chargers too, that alongside Erick Weddle, I believe it was. But yeah, if we're making a case for TJ Ward, we're making a case for Derwin James.
Yeah,
like, granted, he only had 1 year, but it was a year where he was the defensive rookie of the. What was he? Did he win it, or was he just a candidate for it? I can't remember if he won it or not. But he had a tremendous rookie season, and TJ Ward never played as good as Derwin James did.
That's very true.
And so you can definitely make the case for that. I mean, so there's definitely a few different safeties that you can make a case for.
Yeah.
So he didn't win it, but he was the first team All-Pro.
James coming back and says,
Charles Woodson,
Yeah. I think it's a legitimate question at tight end. Depends on whether you value Kelce's yards or Gates's longevity. Surprised that Peyton beat out Rivers. That was kind of my thinking, was Phillip Rivers and what he had done. Now, the Super Bowls is the biggest thing there. But Gates, like I said earlier, man, we're talking Hall of Fame level player. Travis Kelce might be that. Antonio Gates, there's no question about it. He was one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in all of the NFL, especially in the early 2010s when he was really, really good there. That's such a weird argument, and I think Erick's kind of right there. The recency bias is the biggest thing.
J Boss comes in. Seems like Death Valley Deep Divers show always gets cut short on time. Regardless, thanks for the show, guys. Well, today we got started a little bit later than normal. That's my fault. I was sitting there doing research beforehand, which is why we got it so short. But typically our shows are 50 minutes to an hour at least, which is the average for it. I mean, most of the other shows consistently put an hour, but typically we're right there on that track of it. Today is just a little bit different because Lance is out of town at his parents and everything like that. So we just don't want to keep Lance away from that stuff. I mean, family is very important. So.
Yeah, I may be a Broncos analyst and really kind of an NFL analyst as well, but at the same time, I'm a family man and family matters to me. So I do apologize, guys, that I have to cut out of here a little bit short. We're at 41 minutes right now. We still got a little bit of time to get some more of your guys' questions, but we better get them in. You better get them in, because if I'm not seeing any more questions, then we're gonna end up cutting it a little bit short here. So
Kenneth comes in. I'm not sure about asking, I was watching KJ Hamler's high school highlights, and he played on a red field. Seen Boise's blue field, but never a red field. Have you seen any of the colors? I can't remember what school there is, but there is a school that has a green field, not like a grass green. It's like a neon green. And then there's another one that has a pink field. But if you want to talk about fields, search Barrow High School football field. And just look at that and then just wonder who's going to go get the ball. And if you look at the picture of it, you'll see why.
Okay. I guess I've never. So Barrow High School, right?
Barrow is like Barrow High School football field. Barrow is like at the tip of Alaska, like almost right at the tip of it. What's above Alaska? An ocean. Their football field's right alongside the ocean.
Oh, that'd be kind of cool.
And they actually have to put games on hold because polar bears will show up.
Well then. Okay. Now I've seen what is it? Eastern Washington plays on a red field. They're in the Big Sky, and James actually coming in here and doing the Lord's work down below this. Eastern Washington has a red turf field. And Cooper Kupp. I watched a lot of games with Cooper Kupp. My parents, well, my dad specifically, is from Helena, Montana, and they are big Montana Grizzlies fans. So we watched a lot of Montana Grizzlies games and watched Cooper Kupp play on that Eastern Washington red field before. Central Michigan plays on a gray field. I know that. And it's really, it's almost impossible to see the flags when they throw flags on that field. It's really hard to see that. But if you're talking about the coolest end zones in football, Cowboy Joe, Powder River, Letter Butt, go check out Wyoming's end zones. They have the coolest end zones in all of college football. I guarantee it.
So I'm not sure if we got this one earlier, but Terry Randall with a California $2 says Cali money.
Yes.
Thank you, Terry. We always appreciate when you jump in. It also helps us lead to a bunch of jokes and making fun of Lance.
That's what you always do, man. Yeah. James coming in. Central Arkansas has a horrid purple and gray striped field. I've never actually seen that. Okay. Let's see here. Jace coming in here asking a question. Who would you bring back for offensive? I guess I'm not sure what you mean there, buddy. Try again. Come back and try again, and we'll see if we can't get you on here.
There's a story about another high school here in Alaska. I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to share what the high school is because it's their team name is can be taken as very racist. But a lot of people here, people in that city and everything, and the local Native Alaskan tribe, I can't remember what it is, but they sit there and they fight for it all the time too. But there is a lot of funny things with Alaskan football. There is a lot of it, and that's just one of them. Look at Barrowfield, that's awesome. Yeah, and James says, I pity the kicker who kicks it off the field into the ocean. Now do you see why? I wonder who has to go get the footballs.
All right, Sleek Tro coming in on YouTube with a pretty good question. Are there any undrafted free agents you guys are excited to see play? Well, the first and foremost, Asong Bassi, the cornerback, well, really nickel defensive back from Wake Forest is one. Douglas Coleman, we'll see if he can't dethrone Trey Marshall for that free safety, that backup deep safety position. Excuse me. Justin Simmons' backup role is the one that we're looking at there. There was an offensive lineman that you had talked about, Hunter Watts, right? I don't know anything about Hunter Watts. There was an offensive lineman I thought that you had talked about that the Broncos had that could potentially sneak his way onto the practice squad. Maybe not. I could have swore you had said something. I talked about Quentin Bailey a little bit, who was an undrafted free agent from last year. Okay. No, only offensive lineman this year was Hunter Watts, who I don't know much about. Levante Bellamy. Yeah. And then the safety, Douglas Coleman. Yeah, Douglas Coleman, the third from Texas Tech. Yeah, I think he has a skill set that could really push, not necessarily push for a roster spot, but try and push Trey Marshall to be even better than he is. Ooh. Jay Boss coming in here on YouTube. Does it seem like the AFC West has produced more Hall of Fame tight ends than any other division? And I guess that's a strange way of putting it, but I kind of actually agree with that. I mean, you look, obviously Shannon Sharp, Tony Gonzalez in there, Antonio Gates, now Travis Kelce coming in. Hopefully Noah Fant. Yeah, hopefully Noah Fant would be a good one. Darren Waller, I don't believe that's there's just so much. It depends on what the rest of his career does. He's still really young in it. He is still very young. Had the issues in Baltimore after he got drafted out of Georgia Tech, and the conversion changed there. He was a wide receiver at Georgia Tech, converted to tight end, got in trouble with some drugs and stuff like that, bounced around the league, come into last season and had a very good season. Darren Waller was an amazing pass-catching tight end last year. There's a long ways to go there, but still, I mean, you've got 4 guys in the last 20 years that could be Hall of Fame guys, especially if Travis Kelce continues on his trajectory right now. So that's actually a pretty decent point. I never thought about it like that, but thank you, Jay, for kind of giving us an interesting question to break down there, kind of an outside of the box question as well. All right, Peter Middleton coming in here again. Wonder if the online meetings have helped more for the coaches to observe the players discussing the plays, especially with breakout rooms, etc., that they can catch multiple groups in the chat at once. That's another really good question. I mean, I've seen a little bit of the Zoom meetings and stuff just because Jace, who's in the stream today, had some breakout meetings and stuff like that. It's kind of a difficult deal, but at the same time, I wonder how in a more professional setting where you're really working with guys that are not, 12-year-old kids trying to learn over the computer. They're actually really focused into this and making this their career and kind of breaking some stuff down. You can do a lot more. I would imagine you could do a lot more film stuff there, and hearing how guys are breaking down the film more in a meeting like that than you could just standing up in front of them and doing a classroom, get some conversation going. Eric, what do you think? So actually, I mentioned I was playing Warzone. Well, I'm playing Warzone with a couple of college coaches. And one of them's a good friend of the show. It's Luke Polglaze. And one of the things was that we talked about was, I overheard them talking to these two coaches about recruiting, but there are also some things about meeting and everything like that. And it is actually being very beneficial for the coaches to observe them as they're trying to break them down and everything. And it's easier for them to point out mistakes than in a normal meeting room.
or seeing them on the field, and they're able to really help and just like pinpoint exactly where it is. They're finding it a little bit easier, but in the same way, they're having a little bit other complications too. So it's definitely a little bit of pros and cons for both of it. There's definitely more preference for it to be in person though.
Yeah.
At least from the people I've talked to, of course.
Well, obviously, I mean, that in-person interaction, you can really kind of gauge the room a little bit better than a bunch of guys looking at a computer screen. But Peter actually has a really good point here. You can record those meetings as well. So record those, re-watch it, go over and really dive into that kind of stuff and hear the breakdown from not only the coaches, but from the other players again, and not have to just focus on your memory. You can see that stuff happen over and over and over again. That could be a very interesting kind of a quirk there, especially if you hold on to that for the course of the season. So,
well, I mean, you can record in-person meetings. Kept trying to say in-meeting persons as well, and still go over that and break it down. And there are a few teams that do that too.
Yeah. All right. So Robert coming in here, is the Fangio defense unique for all the secondary roles it has? Not
really. No. You kind of want two safeties that can kind of do a little bit of everything. What they do each play obviously changes. There's a lot of cover too from them. And then your corners is basically, it's kind of the same thing that you want from all of your corners. Be able to click and close quickly, and just read the quarterback and make plays with that, with your facing the ball. It's one of the easier schemes for your corners than it is, which is why Denver was able to do so well with all their changes at corners last year. At least statistically, they were able to do out pretty well. Is because it's just so easy when it comes to learning it in the Vic Fangio scheme. A little bit more for them safeties, but it's still not a super unique role from one to the other.
Yeah, it really, that match quarters defense, I believe, as Nick has broke it down before. Quarter of the field down matchup in that quarter of the zone. Once it breaks off, then you kind of go. You have to have two defensive safeties that can actually work versatility, and that was a big thing that James has places an emphasis on versatility, intelligence, and matchup ability. You have to be able to match up one-on-one, but also understand that where your zone ends and the other begins, there's that gray area. You've got to pass off and then get back into your own zone. Match quarters is very simplistic, but also very detailed procedure in that kind of a defense, understanding where your zone ends and then the other person's begins in that gray area, the mesh point, handing out stuff off. That's why you saw Michael Ojemudia be able to do that in as far as passing off his guy, not really getting beaten deep, because he understands where that zone ends, the others begins, and rides through that zone, especially if the ball is coming his direct way. So that's a big thing. Now, Terry Randall coming in again from Canada, not from California. Drop a like, hashtag state of being. Yes, please do now. Christian, a couple more guys before we got to get out of here. A couple more, so make sure you get them in quick. We got some really good ones to close this out. How do you guys think the Broncos defense will try to slow down Tyreek Hill and the speed on the Chiefs offense? I don't know how you do. There's just, because it's such a multifaceted speed attack. You've got, Sammy Watkins is a very fast player. They had Demaryius Robinson last year, but Tyreek Hill obviously moving side to side over the middle of the field, also stretching the field vertically. You've got Damian Williams out there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire may not be the fastest guy, but still pretty good running back, good speed, good burst to him as well. There's just so many. Travis Kelce as well is a very good athlete at the tight end position. There's so many ways that the Chiefs can attack you, not only vertically but horizontally. They can move across your face. They're zone killers, but they're also man killers too, because they cross your face in so many different directions. It's a very hard way to kind of defeat that offense. I don't know the exact answer other than being physical at the line of scrimmage, knocking off the timing, and getting a quick interior pass rush against Patrick Mahomes and not allowing him to escape vertically within the pocket where he can extend plays and push the ball down the field. That's the biggest key to beating the Chiefs right now.
To answer the question is, if you try and slow down Tyreek Hill, somebody else is just going to beat you. You just got to, the best way to match up with them is to have the offensive match them in points. That's the best way. And you try and limit their explosive plays as much as possible. Keep your safeties deep to try and not let big plays happen. But yeah, as Lance said, they're zone killers, they're man killers. They were the most effective team running rub routes last year. Just tremendous. Just the offensive game designs are just tremendous. And it really does. It starts with the coaching, and then they have the players that go out there and execute it. Just basically to perfection. So yeah, you just want the point to be able to match them in points, limit explosive plays, and do your damnedest to get to Patrick Mahomes and get him on the ground every single play.
Yeah. If you can't pressure Patrick Mahomes and keep him contained is the biggest thing. You have to get pressure on him, keep him contained, and find out a way to just be sticky in coverage. And there's no real correct answer to that. But the biggest thing is knock off the timing. Really, if you can, go back to that Wade Phillips press man coverage. Figure out a way to stay sticky. Get to the quarterback as quickly as you possibly can and get him on the ground, and don't let him extend stuff. And that's so hard to do with him. He's such a sneaky good athlete. That former baseball background, being able to move at weird angles, throw the ball from different arm angles. It's impossible to look at. And yeah, you can try to take away Tyreek Hill, and like Eric said, you're going to get hit with the Sammy Watkins game where he has 220 yards and 4 touchdowns, or whatever it was that he had against the Jaguars in week 1, I believe it was last year, had that monster game. Then you have again, Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming out of the backfield as a receiver, really good running back. Damian Williams, who's an explosive kind of a player. Travis Kelce will kill you. Those guys are going to eat, but where does that tertiary receiver come in? The Demarcus Robinson, who was the other guy? Mecole Hardman. Where do those guys come into this? Because you can't cover everybody all at the same time. And no, it doesn't matter. Those guys may be the most inconsistent from a game-to-game basis, but consistently the Chiefs are finding someone to make a big play in a key moment, an explosive play, to keep the offense still well-rounded enough that you're not going to be able to stop it. You have to either keep up with him or destroy Patrick Mahomes in a legal, clean way. That's the only way you stop it.
Yeah.
Kenneth Booker coming in here, and he says, I've seen this comment twice now, so I wanted to grab this. I worked guest relations during Peyton's time. Sanders was against Talib in practice. He humiliated him with his quicks every play. Judy and Hamler route videos are the quickest cuts I've seen, and it continued since. Now, the videos that we're watching, just because everything's so out in the open, especially with what we've got going on in the world right now, people not being able to be at team facilities and stuff. There's obviously no really mandated workouts going on. These are all voluntary stuff. And with the social media capture culture we have right now, everyone's putting this stuff out. But KJ Hamler is working on his route running ability, and he looked very smooth from the video that I saw. Jerry Jeudy, obviously, we already know, very good there. But to call him the quickest and cleanest cuts you've seen since, Eric, does that line up with what you believe?
It definitely lines up with it. I just want to see it translate onto the field, obviously. My concerns with both Jeudy and Hamler have never been their route running. Well, haven't been their cuts. Hamler still needs a little bit of work to just clean up his routes a little bit. But it's never been my concerns with him, so I'm glad that they're looking so good with their route running, but it was kind of expected.
Yeah. Did I lose you? Nope, there you are. Okay. All righty, guys. Not seeing anything else coming in here, so I think we're going to wrap it up there so I can go and get this barbecue going with all the rest of my family. Got the smoker going. I'm doing jalapeno poppers for everybody. But anyways, guys, thank you all for joining the Dove Valley Deep Divers Live Show, this special Saturday edition of Dove Valley Deep Divers Live podcast. You guys can follow us both on Twitter. You can find me at Sanderson MHH, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Notice the CK in Eric and the EL in Trickel. Also, follow at DVDD_pod. That's the show account. We post updates there, and just kind of the easiest way to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on. Head on over to huddleuppod.com. Get your swag on. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a T-shirt. Hit the merch booth on your way out, guys. Get a coffee cup, face mask. There's pretty much anything for everybody. If you're not able to do something like that, the easiest way to support the show in the most organic way possible is to subscribe wherever you're watching, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, anything like that. Subscribe wherever you are watching this show. Like every video you see on every single platform there is, whether it's Eric's content coming about, the roster breakdowns, any podcast shows, anything Chad's putting up there as well. I'd like to get started on some videos as well. But anyways, like every single one. And if you love it, share it. Get it out in front of as many people as possible. Also, while I have you guys still here for just a second, follow at Mile High Huddle. on Twitter as well. It's the best way to get breaking news and analysis, insider pieces, opinions, film breakdowns, stuff like that. Everything on milehighhuddle.com, and everything with the Huddle Up Podcast Network comes on at Mile High Huddle on Twitter. And if nothing else, head on over to milehighhuddle.com, get into the comment section. We keep the conversation flowing over that way. We're on there every single day. Eric is on there all the time commenting on every single article. I comment, well, not every single article or not all the time, but we are on there all the time. There's at least somebody that's on milehighhuddle.com in the comment section, talking to everybody, getting some more questions. If you can't get to us on the live shows, listen to it after the fact on the podcast. Find an article that is at least related to what you're wanting to ask. Ask that question there, and we'll answer it for you in the community section there. Now, Eric, before we get out of here, you got any last words?
Well, before we get out of here, I want to say to Peter, thank you for joining us. We were glad you were able to be joined on.
Yes,
for people like you that live in Europe and Asia and that whole area, that's a big reason why Lance and I have been pushing for a Saturday show. Just doesn't seem doable here in the foreseeable future, but we are definitely still pushing at it and just talking over the semantics of it with Chad. Hopefully someday we will be able to bring you a show consistently on Saturday about the same time. And then Jay came in with a $5 donation saying, babies are amazing. Congrats. Babies definitely are amazing. And Lance, definitely congrats to you. Can't wait for the baby to be here, but you still failed in not naming it Eric. Anyways, that's going to do it for us, guys. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for being here today after we decided not to do the show last night. And we will be back next Friday at our normal time. And I guess place, really, because you'll be home. And I'm always home. So, yeah, we'll be back in normal time and normal place.
Yeah, normal time, the same time, same place, Friday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. You guys stay safe. Take care. Have a great weekend. Happy Father's Day to everybody in Broncos country. We'll see you next week.